In the gentle whispers of history, in that curious blend of reality and myth carried by the winds of ancient times, there lies the inception of Greek mythology. It begins in a way much like any old, reliable days of yore narrative should, with a big bang, or rather, something akin to a cosmic porridge spill. You see, the Greeks believed the universe started not with neat and tidy creation, but with glorious chaos, lovingly referred to as chaos itself, which instantly makes things sound a tad more important, doesn't it? In imagining chaos, picture not a neat prelude to the universe, but a divine mix-up. Something that might resemble your sock drawer on a particularly indecisive Monday. A swirling, infinite expanse of possibility where everything is everywhere and nowhere all at once. From this cosmic confusion, the first primordial deities appeared, forming our foundational blend of characters for this mythological tale. Introducing Gaia, the Earth personified, who decided that being just a floating clod of cosmic dust wasn't quite her style. She was the solid ground beneath everyone's feet, and arguably the world's first real estate mogul. Shortly after, born from the intricate tapestry of chaos and order, came Tartarus, the murky depths of the underworld. Imagine him as the cellar-dwelling sibling, rarely seen at family gatherings, but essential for storing all those awkward plot elements no one quite knows where to put. Now, given that primordials had little more to do than exist and idle around their ethereal domains, Gaia got creative. She had some offspring, and not just a brood, but titans with grandiose ambitions and melodramatic portfolios. And let's not mince words here. These guys were looming giants of divine mischief and poorly thought-out plans. One such offspring, Uranus, joined Gaia's living room lineup. Uranus was the sky, high above and just a touch full of himself, like an uncle at the family barbecue stretching on his hammock of clouds, admiring his own heavenly expanse. Their relationship was as complicated as they come, partly due to Uranus's tendency to be quite the overbearing celestial ceiling. But it's from this divine pairing spring forth the infamous Titans. Their children, the Titans, were as diversified in personality as they were in size. Leading the pack was mighty Cronus, the ambitious yet slightly paranoid fellow with a penchant for timepieces. Not technically true, but it does help explain his later association with the concept of time. Alert and perhaps an insomniac, Cronus soon took over, overthrowing Pops with a swift dethroning, rather standard protocol for such mythological narratives. You see, in this grand mythological reality, good succession planning involved a sickle and a can-do attitude, but slicing through starlit debates on generational family feuds, let's pause for a moment to appreciate the simple, serene beauty of such stories. These ancient tales are like bedtime lullabies, sung from the past, where grand drama and comedic mishaps yet dance hand in hand. It's a journey into the cradle of Western mythology, where natural phenomena took center stage, playfully masquerading as divine personalities. Perhaps as we wander through these stories, they might guide you gently towards slumber. If these tales help you drift off, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. And before you fully fade into dreamland, I would love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. As you nestle into the comfort of your pillows, ponder this bustling tapestry of deities, conjuring cosmic chaos into sagas of earth-shattering magnitude, and slide softly into the mythology of the gods yet to come on this serene journey. But for now, let us rest with Cronus contemplating his inherited universe as the stars quietly wheel overhead. Once upon a time, in the dusty archives of Mount Olympus, where scrolls have heard the whispers of the ages, we journey to a realm of titans, heroes, and more questionable decisions than a toga party after too much ambrosia. Nestled in the cradle of antiquity rests the city of Athens, named after Athena, the goddess who won a territorial dispute with Poseidon by offering olive trees instead of salt water. Exactly who was overseeing that taste test is still up for debate. Picture, if you will, a land riddled with an overabundance of divine beings, each with more flair than a peacock with a superiority complex. Here, Zeus, the head honcho, reigned supreme, a thunderbolt-wielding CEO of Olympus Incorporated, whose primary pastime seemed to be making an astonishing array of enemies and offspring alike. Now, Zeus wasn't exactly known for his restraint. His penchant for transformations was rivaled only by his questionable choices in romantic partners. From becoming a shower of gold to pursue Danae to taking the guise of a swan for Leda, his escapades read like a mythical, a shape-shifting memoir. Beside him, Hera, the goddess of marriage, presided with the patience of a saint, or rather, the bemused resignation of a spouse whose husband turns up at family gatherings under increasingly dubious circumstances. Known for her jealous streak, Hera excelled at dispatching curses upon Zeus's many paramours and illegitimate progeny. There were more than a few transformed into constellations, flowers, or particularly scenic geographic features. Talk about celestial rearrangement therapy. Floating in this scholastic sea of divine intrigue was Athena, she of strategic war and wisdom. With her helmet gleaming like a well-polished philosophical argument, she was one of the gods with a steady head on her shoulders. It helps when you emerge fully grown from the forehead of Zeus, presumably skipping childhood and the awkward teenage phase entirely. Her affinity for reason over rashness often left her at odds with Ares, the god of war, whose simple strategy of more, the bloodshed, clashed with her plans as often as books clash with fire. Then there was Hermes, fleet of foot and nimble of wit, serving as the divine postman. This well-shoed deity, with sandals that could win any marathon, was the messenger of the gods, the one who adhered least to daylight savings, considering his time management enabled surprise announcements and swift departures. If you ever found yourself bewildered by the speed of mythic bureaucracy, you likely had Hermes to thank. In the shadow of the Parthenon, these Olympians sculpted the fates with the finesse of artists too caffeinated to stick to one masterpiece at a time, each offering not only their gifts but also their foibles to the world below. And on Earth, humans navigated the whims of the gods with the resigned tenacity of sailors steering their ships through thankless seas. Now, if mortals wanted a more serene existence, they might have sent a prayer to Hestia, goddess of the hearth, though her quietude meant few, sung her praises, an oversight for which she was presumably quite thankful. However, when prayers for rain went unanswered, or a husband returned from war, just to find he's been turned into a weasel, it was always a convenient scapegoat to point fingers at fickle Olympian post-it notes. As the stars twinkled over antiquity's drama-ridden lands, it becomes apparent that the ancients knew how to spin a yarn as well as they could weave fabric. In a world where donkeys brayed with the voices of philosophers and the ripest pears promised eternal beauty, these myths were the lullabies whispered through the corridors of time, echoing into the stillness of night. In contemplating these tales, woven by the gods and goddesses who shaped destinies with the carelessness of a potter toying with clay, one might find themselves nodding off to a gentle slumber. After all, there's nothing quite like divine drama to lull even the most awake of dreamers into the realm of dreams, where shadows of ancient myths fade into the soft embrace of sleep. And so, we rest upon the edge of dreams and history, ready to turn the page into another tale. In the gentle twilight of our story, where myth meets the pillow, and the dulcet tones of ancient whispers are just audible over the rustling sheets, let us turn our sleepy gaze to the antics of the Titans, the original unruly teenagers of Greek mythology. These primeval deities were nothing if not adventurously wild, like the ancient cosmic version of a rock band. It all began with Uranus, the sky himself, and Gaia, the earth we rest upon. Their celestial union was as wondrous as the perfect combination of warm milk and honey just before bed. But like all family gatherings that start with good intentions and end with someone inevitably flipping the table, So did this divine relationship hit a bit of a snag. Uranus, worried about his offspring's ambitious nature, decided the basement was too good for them and opted for Tartarus, a place not typically known for its hospitality or its spa services. Enter Cronus, the boldest of the Titan brood, carrying both a sharp sickle and an even keener sense of irony. In a plot twist that would make even the boldest daytime soap operas blush, Cronus overthrew Uranus and took control, ensuring that family dinners would never again be a straightforward affair. With his rise came a golden age, where paper towel vendors complained about business plummeting because nothing got spilled, except, of course, secrets and a touch of nepotism. Married to his equally charismatic sister Rhea, Cronus ruled the universe with an iron fist wrapped in a velvet glove, or at least a glove stitched with threads of slightly less threatening material. But as history often repeats, with the alarming regularity of a shopping cart wheel's squeak, Cronus replicated Uranus's paranoia with admirable thoroughness. Advised by a prophecy that one of his children would usurp him, Cronus did what any paranoid divine being would do. He ate them. Now, eating one's progeny was hardly a Michelin-starred idea, but fear does strange things to the gastronomical calendar. Yet it was Rhea who, not amused by her husband's bizarre tastes, devised a cunning plan. When it came time to deal with her youngest, Zeus, she wrapped a rock in swaddling clothes and handed it over to Cronus with a wink that would make a sly fox reconsider its career choices. Zeus, the rock star of this celestial opera, was spirited away to the island of Crete, a place later known as the initial test hub for ambitious escapees with destiny-induced agenda. Raised in secret, amidst the whispers of trees and woolly bleats of cunning sheep, Zeus matured into a god with strength as fierce as a mother's bedtime story, told just right to ensure sweet dreams. Armed with grown-up godly gusto and a connoisseur's eye for poetic justice, Zeus eventually returned to dethrone his father. But not before a series of daring escapades, secret meetings, and one or two incidents best left as cautionary tales for future mythological minds. With the might of 1,000 Netflix series combined, he liberated his siblings from their organic prison within Cronus's digestive depths, which must have been a strange family reunion indeed. Now, my dear dreambound traveler, as eyelids grow heavy and the world becomes a softer shade of twilight, we'll pause here to ponder the celestial soap operas of yesteryear. Soon, we shall continue drifting further into the sea of stars, where mighty Zeus sets forth to establish a realm as timeless as the tales spun in moonlit yarn. Until then, let the echoes of laughter linger softly like a lullaby that begins with "Once upon a time," playing gently against the canvas of sleep. Ah, my dear listener, come with me now as we glide through the enchanting and somewhat spindly corridors of Greek mythology. Allow your mind to wander into the garden of godly encounter, where our story today sprinkles a dash of celestial comedy amidst these ancient tales, under a sky that is neither too stormy nor too bright. Picture, if you will, the vast tapestry of Mount Olympus. Now you might imagine it as a shimmering peak reaching the heavens. But let's be honest, nobody has been up there recently to verify its precise altitude. Myth suggests it's where the 9 muses would gather. But honestly, Zeus could have fibbed about the mailing address just to avoid some good, old divine landlord inspections. Today, we find ourselves observing the peculiar trio of fates, the well-known spinners of destiny. Now, these goddesses together were not your snappy dresses, more the kind you'd spot in mismatched togas, equipped with an intimidating set of knitting needles that control the metaphysical threads of life. Each sister had her role: Clotho, who spun the thread; Lachesis, who measured it with a thinly veiled sense of humor; and Atropos, who had a flair for cutting, with her ever-sharp scissors. Imagine them now, sitting in their celestial cottage, basking in the glow from their hearth, as they went about their business of determining mortal destinies. Clotho, with the large flick of a wrist, spun a fresh batch of life yarn while humming a tune suspiciously similar to a classic Greek rock ballad. Lachesis counted out beats with a shepherd's crook, and Atropos savoured her cup of ambrosia tea, contemplating the eloquence of another dramatic snip. It's worth giggling at the idea that maybe, just perhaps, these fateful sisters were the original multitaskers. Imagine them resorting to shorthand for humans who really needed a second chance. Give you this one a stronger thread, or employing what could only be described as fate in training assistants, if the muse fits. The logistics alone seem like an agonizingly bureaucratic endeavor. All the while, across the divine neighborhood, the notorious Zeus was perhaps audaciously tending to a storm or two. After all, what else was he to do in his capacity as king of the gods, aside from orchestrating a few persuasive lightning strikes and elaborate banquets where he regaled with tales of awkward escape from his better half, Hera? Ah, the domestic dramas of Olympus, quite the celestial soap opera in its own right. With every swish and snip of the fates' dedication, stories unfolded. Heroes were born, some thick-headed, others astonishingly wise. No myth was complete without the odd life or death errand that resulted in massive transformations or equally significant life lessons. These lessons, of course, went into some sort of divine HR handbook that only upstarts like Hermes found remotely engaging. Dozing off into the night, the sun slipped its radiant blanket over the Greek landscapes. The fates continued their work as the stars twinkled into being one by one, each a button of light stitched carefully into the midnight sky. Perhaps they laid out patterns that would inspire future armchair astrologers. Perhaps their weaving would one day predict that moment your favorite team finally wins the championship in a burst of godly good favor. Or not. And so, my friend, as your gently tethered eyelids begin to flutter with soft whispers of rest, set your imagination adrift upon these becalmed seas of myth. Let the laughter of Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos echo as a distant lullaby. Dream sweetly as the fates arrange the thin strands of lives yet lived, waiting to offer yet another splendid chapter in the weighty book of dreams and myths. As you slip deeper under Morpheus's serene embrace, know that our mythological path will continue weaving its tale soon enough, spinning its yarn anew under yet another starlit sky. In the mysterious lands of ancient Greece, where gods roamed free and mortals frequently found themselves in recipes for stew, our tale meanders now into the realm of divine craftsmanship. Picture a place not often highlighted for its eternally lit beacons of humor, the workshop of Hephaestus, the forgotten hero of household appliance maintenance. Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith charged with forging the mighty weapons of gods, was known for two things: the artistic genius that brought Zeus's thunderbolts to life and his notoriously unpredictable temperament. Image a majestic figure, arms muscled like the very iron he bends, yet often overly occupied with functioning like a prototype of your modern-day, task-focused uncle, gruff and ever disinterested in the latest family gossip. His workshop was a wonder, a place where magic and metal clasped hands in a union as sacred as a well-boiled kettle. Nestled within the fiery interior of Mount Etna, Hephaestus's dwelling was often bustling with creativity. Sparks flew, hammers sang, and an aroma somewhere between molten iron and freshly burnt toast hovered in the air. Probably why Olympus never provided complimentary hotel breakfast vouchers. Despite his somewhat fiery disposition and a noticeable limp, perhaps the ancient Greek version of giving character to one's narrator, Hephaestus was the envy of other gods, particularly Apollo, who spent an inordinate amount of time trying rather unsuccessfully to rejig his music instruments with fancier hardware. The one thing that truly set Hephaestus apart from his celestial siblings, however, was his unique gift for crafting automatons. Yes, you heard correctly. While the Greeks didn't boast Wi-Fi, they did boast robots. Clever, mythical automatons clanking and clinking in unison, fulfilling Hephaestus's whims as if participating in a divine dance contest. Who knew that ancient Greece was secretly one assembly line away from establishing an early version of the Industrial Revolution? Hephaestus's creations weren't just of the mechanical variety either. His crafting skill extended to things of beauty, like Aphrodite's magic girdle, which suspiciously could have doubled as the world's first strapless wonder. His fingers threaded both spark and allure, creating items that symbolize the god's mighty status. From Aegis shields to retractable recliners, rumored to be more comfortable than a golden lily pad. And let's not forget Talos, one of his most famous creations, who was basically a giant bronze action figure parading around with a penchant for chasing intruders. A marvel of artistry and amusement, Talos could have easily descended into modern league bowling night championships. It seems Hephaestus's only real mistake was not integrating streamlined surveillance software that would have surely provided Artemis with all the juicy hunting footage she could desire. As our tale weaves its path through history's laughter, it's worth noting Hephaestus's instrumental role in inadvertently championing marital chaos. His marriage to Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, was an exercise in divine comedy. She, embodying perfection, and he, embodying rustic charm and a workshop covered in as much dust as golden fleece, made for an awkward, noble couple. Their union was not without issues, like her frequent visits to Ares's bachelor pad, or his rather quiet habit of spending nights caught up in welding warmongering cookware. In the dim glow of a smith's forge, and with each plumed stroke of his heavenly hammer, Hephaestus imbued objects with stories, his legacy forged in the ever-murmuring winds of mythology. His life, a wonderful testament that craftsmanship and humor are timeless entities, showing that even gods sometimes take refuge in labs from dinner parties. As Hephaestus completes his nightly tinkering, stoking the fires beneath Mount Etna ever so slightly, the underworld's gates quiver in anticipation. But that, dear listeners, is a tale for another time, where shadows dance and even dreams take a detour in the labyrinthine depths of Hades himself. In the sleepy world of Greek mythology, where logic and continuity took leisurely sabbaticals, gods and mortals muddled through hilariously epic tales brimming with grandeur and gossip, our story meanders to the serene banks of the river Styx, where Hermes, the fleet-footed divine messenger and occasional trickster, once endeavored to set a curious Olympian trend. In the high heavens of Mount Olympus, Hermes buzzed between cloud and gossip, because why walk when you could fly? On one particular day, when Zeus had wrapped up throwing thunders for entertainment and Hera was suspiciously quiet, Hermes proposed a new celestial activity. "Let's play the Hades Challenge," said he, expertly juggling several golden lyres. The rules were scintillatingly simple, at least as simple as anything could be in Olympus, where convoluted was an art form, naturally. Participants had to embark on a perilous journey through the underworld to steal an unlikely object, Hades' infamous cap of invisibility. A bit of light-hearted thievery and mirth. No harm had done. Well, except perhaps to one's footing on the slippery, metaphorical banana peels of morality. Only those with the nerve of Hermes and the heart of a high-stakes poker player dared to join. Apollo, with his sunlit charm, Dionysus, already inebriated with his own grandeur and grape-flavored fantasies, and Athena, who thought the entire premise ridiculous but also profoundly educational, filled out the merry cohort. With Hermes dutifully leading, lips pursed in a knowing smirk, they approached the dim-lit thresholds of the underworld. Charon, the ever-diligent ferryman, kindly agreed to overlook official ferry fares once he caught a glimpse of Apollo's lyre, in surprising need of tuning. They glided across the Styx, a liquid trail of mythological laissez-faire, subversion adrift among the shadowy waves. Upon arrival, shadows thick as honey embraced each traveler. Here, in this sepulchral realm, the kvetching of souls was a lullaby, and screams were as common as Hades, complaining about his underappreciated real estate holdings. Hermes cautioned for silence as the troupe approached Hades' abode, a place that bore the interior design hallmarks of Gothic chic meets ceremonial chaos. The cap, shimmering discreetly from a nearby plinth, sat invitingly under the watchful yet bored eyes of Cerberus, the multi-headed canine whose primary job description was ironically challenging in a head count. With the distraction deftly handled by an impromptu symphonic performance from Apollo, featuring a surprisingly smooth lute rendition of The Chill of Hades, Dionysus kept one head entertained with a bottomless goblet, while Athena invoked her strategic prowess debating the existential implications of eternity with the remaining head. In a swirl of shadows and coincidentally muffled bark, Hermes, with elegant stealth, nabbed the cap, tossing it jovially over his shoulder into the capable hands of Athena, the wise, whose eyes gleamed with a strategic contemplation. It was a victorious, mig-eyed dalliance, a gentle nudge to tradition, and a delightful addition to Olympus's tales of wit and whimsy. And thus, with deeds done and heads pacified, they returned to sunlight, Hermes leading the vanguard, his face a mask of mischievous accomplishment. Tales of their adventure cascaded through the halls of Olympus, where Zeus chuckled at this newfound trend of playful pilfering, while Hades, ever the humorless landlord, bore the mysterious disappearance of his cap with grumbling reluctance, yet silent admiration for the audacious folly. As they ascended, the serene blanket of night embraced the mountain, watches shifted, and whispers of their nocturnal escapade diffused into dreams of wonder and mirth, leaving you to drift toward the shores of slumber, ready for the next whimsical tale that awaits on this meandering journey through myth and mild mayhem. Ah, my dear listeners, we find ourselves once again at the crossroads of entertainment and academia. Tonight, let us traipse through the aromatic olive groves of ancient Greece, where the gods played chess with destiny and, it seems, frequently misplaced their pawns. But rather than focus on the grandiose clashes of titans and heroes, this evening we'll meander through a peculiar sort of mythical anecdote about Apollo, Hermes, and a truly sensational cattle heist. Now Apollo, the Olympian god of music, prophecy, and sunny dispositions, was anything but collected when it came to his beloved cattle. Yes, Apollo was indeed a herdsman at heart, although one must admit he preferred lyres and prophecy scrolls to cowbells. Enter our scene stealer, Hermes, the freshest Olympian on the block, and a god whose youthful exuberance was matched only by his cleverness. One would think the wings on his sandals lent more to elevation of spirit than mere flight. Moments after Hermes emerged in the world, much like an overzealous toddler, he set out to make his mark, literally and figuratively. Before the ink could dry on his divine birth certificate, Hermes had already found an irresistible target, Apollo's cattle, gleaming like a row of Trojan treasures under the sun. These were no ordinary moo-makers, but nothing a quick-witted trickster couldn't handle. Without so much as a second thought, Hermes shuffled the lot of them away in the dead of night, walking them backward to cleverly obscure their tracks. Yes, these ancient Greek cattle were said to have been remarkably cooperative, either charmed by Hermes's harp, or convinced this unusual moonlit escapade was a casual evening stroll. The morning after, Apollo discovered his bovine entourage had vanished, predictably leaving him in a less than melodious mood. You see, even the god gifted with foresight could not peer through a sibling's prank. With sunbeams threatening to lose their warmth under his furrowed brows, Apollo stormed off to consult the all-seeing powers of divine investigation, but not before tuning his divinity to detect a certain newly minted god. Apollo, armed with celestial patience and a burning curiosity, approached Hermes who, despite being a mere infant, feigned a level of innocence that surely inspired later generations of precocious thinkers. Hermes, swaddled in audacity, denied any mischief with the kind of charm that probably launched 1,000 get-out-of-ambrosia-free cards in his future. Realizing the ruse, and not one to be outdone in cunning, Apollo resorted to a divine yet civil sibling arbitration. Before Zeus, in a courtroom without walls or ceilings, both gods pled their cases. Zeus, wisely realizing the entertainment value and who can pass up family drama with eternal consequences, decided that Hermes should return the cattle. In a gesture reminding all that this was not just a courtroom, but a divine daytime drama, the misunderstanding ended with laughter. Truth be told, Hermes, not one to part with anything but charm, created the lyre as an offering to Apollo, redeeming himself with artistry. The god of the sun accepted, as much impressed with the contraption as he was relieved to see his cattle back in their meadow. A playful rivalry born, but also a lasting brotherly bond sealed with the rhythm of the celestial spheres. And thus, my dear sleeper, in search of myths, the two gods became entwined in an alliance where music and mischief would stroll hand in hand, one note grazing into eternity. With a contented sigh, the night softly beckons us to listen further, where the borders of myth invite us to explore how other gods navigated their peculiar pantheon partnerships. A delicate cosmic symphony is ever ready to play out in further tales, lulling us deeper into the comfortable imaginings of an ancient world where even in divine affairs, the melody of sibling shenanigans played true and strong. In the starry skies, twinkling high above ancient Greece, the constellations were not merely celestial bodies scattered across the darkness, but intricate stories laid out by the gods. Cosmic graffiti, if you will. No section of the heavens was left untouched by Zeus's artistic flourish, as he declared a new constellation every time something particularly peculiar happened among the mortals, or, more often than not, the gods themselves. Imagine it as the original sticker book, where the heroic, the tragic, and just the plain bizarre got a permanent spot. Our tale tonight focuses on just a few of those sparkling clusters, each with its own quirky backstory. First, picture poor Orion, a mighty hunter but perhaps not the brightest star in the cosmic sky, whose tale of hubris and affiliation issues eventually led to his placement among the stars. Armed only with a bow and unquenchable confidence, Orion spent most of his time either hunting or showing off his hunting prowess, which inflamed both admiration and disdain in equal measure wherever he went. Traits one might argue are perfect for stardom. Orion ended up on a celestial pedestal because of his inability to resist telling people just how good he was at hunting. And by people, I mean goddesses, which are the worst kind to provoke with boasts unless you're fond of swimming with the cosmic fishes. He proclaimed to the goddess Artemis and her mother, Leto, that he could hunt down any beast on earth. This boast proved to be, how can we put this, gravely miscalculated. Artemis was enamored with Orion's skills, perhaps more his charming swagger than his promises. Unfortunately, a jealous Gaia, the earth itself in corporeal form, took Orion's bragging session to heart, sending a colossal scorpion to challenge him. A fiendish arachnid that didn't appreciate Orion's speeches on personal greatness. The ensuing skirmish was a spectacle deserving of the divine reality show it inevitably became. Orion met his match and, subsequently, his untimely end at the pincers of the stinging creation. Yet the gods couldn't resist, theatrically placing both the scorpion and the hunter in the sky, forever frozen in their lethal dance. Thus, constellations Orion and Scorpius came to be, perpetually pursuing one another, ensuring bedtime skies are never without drama. Next, we bring our sleepy eyes to the tale of Cassiopeia, whose near-disastrous beauty competition put her right among the stars. Cassiopeia was a queen whose beauty was only rivaled by her talent for self-admiration. She declared unapologetically that her charm exceeded that of the sea nymphs, the Nereids, causing Poseidon, their typically moody patron, great offense. In an overreaction of divine proportions, Poseidon sent a sea monster, Cetus, to wreak havoc on Cassiopeia's kingdom. It's a lesson, gentle listener, in why comparing oneself to deities or divine beings rarely ends in winning anything other than an undesired spot in the night sky. To appease Poseidon's wrath, a compromise was reached after so much hullabaloo. Andromeda, Cassiopeia's, a daughter, was to be sacrificed, setting in motion a chain of events that got Perseus involved, a hero fresh from a Gorgon's decapitation with a knack for saving damsels. After a predictably heroic rescue, thanks largely in part to Perseus's quick thinking and ownership of a winged horse, Andromeda was saved, marriages were conducted. Pace yourselves on that excitement, dear listeners. and the family found contentment at last, except for Cassiopeia. For her vanity, she is depicted in the sky as the constellation Cassiopeia, doomed to sway upside down half of the time, a celestial reminder of the perils of putting one's beauty above all God's given humility. As these tales whisper silently across the heavens, the night is smudged with stories immortalized above, a gallery of light where myths hold hands with reality, offering a gentle backdrop perfect for drifting into a peaceful slumber. As your eyelids grow heavier with each softly glowing star, the embrace of these myths nudges you ever closer towards the comforting waves of restful sleep. Let us linger here in this serene moment as another mythic tale sleeps just beyond the horizon, awaiting the soft unfolding of another dreamy chapter. As our sleepy journey tiptoes onwards through the labyrinthine alleys of Greek mythology, let us pause, not just for a cup of ambrosia, but because we've now stumbled upon the peculiar tale of the Trojan horse, a wooden contraption that even IKEA would struggle to assemble. Our story begins not on the battlefield, but in the curious mind of Odysseus, a man whose ingenuity was matched only by the length of his Odyssey home. Picture this: the city of Troy, its walls unyielding and its guards possibly suffering from mild insomnia after 10 long years of Greek sieging. Out of sheer desperation, or perhaps just lack of entertainment, Odysseus conjured a curious solution to breach these walls. He proposed building a giant wooden horse, spacious enough inside to fit a handful of Greeks with a penchant for cramped quarters. This Trojan horse, or as we might affectionately call it, the original DIY project, was a ruse that spun history on its hoof. Odysseus might have whispered his plan to the waves of the Aegean Sea, which chuckled back softly, but it was the sweaty soldiers in the Greek encampment who began hammering away at the wooden leviathan. Now the Greeks had many admirable qualities, but an affinity for carpentry was rarely noted among them. Despite their lack of certifications, they sawed and hammered, and after what must have felt like centuries, their wooden art, and likely their splinter-ridden fingers, were finally complete. The horse, grand in stature and smell, was placed outside the gates of Troy, an offering of supposed surrender. The Trojans, known for their skepticism only on days that didn't end in EY, fell for the Greeks' cunning ruse. It's said that the sight of the wooden beast prompted debates among the Trojans akin to arguing whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Alas, they decided to roll their peculiar equine gift within city walls, possibly thinking it possessed some rustic charm for college students or as a potential Airbnb. As night draped its sleepy veil over Troy and the city fell into a slumber richer than the gods' nectar, the Greeks nestled within the horse emerged like groggy partygoers out of a very tight elevator. If only there were a Yelp review to capture their discomfort with comments like, "Poor legroom," and "woody fragrance too immersive." They opened the gate to the awaiting Greek forces, leading to the fall of Troy. As stories often end with a moral, remember this: it's never a good idea to accept unexpected gifts, especially ones that could potentially require pet insurance. Now, one might wonder, didn't anyone think twice about a hollow horse? Enter Laocoon, a Trojan priest with a penchant for wisdom and, unfortunately, swimming in serpents. He warned the Trojans with a vehement, "Beware Greeks bearing gifts," only to have his cries muffled by convenient divine intervention, 2 serpents from Poseidon, who clearly had too much time on his hands. Allow this to solidify the often timeless advice. When threatened by serpents from the sea, don't ignore the prophetic priest. This tale, steeped in the cunning artistry for which Greek mythology is famed, serves as a reminder of Odysseus's critical thinking, or what we today might commend as a successful lateral thinking exercise. After the dust settled and Troy was fashionably in ruins, the Greek heroes sailed homeward. The gods, in their infinite shenanigans, tossed obstacles in their paths, like Zeus playing cosmic basketball with storm clouds. As for Odysseus, he embarked on what became the most poetic detour in history, proving once more that there's simply no GPS signal strong enough when the gods are involved. Now, as the sands of slumber spill gently through the hourglass, let the tale of the Trojan horse, one of the original out-of-the-box solutions, lull you into your warm blankets. But remember, there's more wondrous folly and divine drama ahead as we continue our voyage through the dreamscape of Greek mythology, where the fates weave stories with threads of both clay and stars. Rest now, and let the myths rock your ship gently on the soundless sea of dreams. In the cool breath of Hellenic night air, let us drift together into the legends and tales of divine drama that shaped our dear cosmos, courtesy of ancient Greece's most dysfunctional family, the Olympians. Tonight, we'll take a leisurely midnight stroll to Olympus, a supernatural soap opera realm with all the trimmings, ambrosia, intrigue, and the occasional sibling spat over the universe. We begin with the lovely and inexplicably sticky dinner table of Zeus, king of the gods. Zeus, known both for wielding lightning bolts and a penchant for shapeshifting, often as an animal for reasons best left discussed in philosophical treatises, had a rather unique family dynamic. Picture the scene. He's seated at the table with his siblings. Hera, his wife. So Greek mythology tells us, don't blame the messenger. We merely narrate history's eccentricities. Poseidon, the often cranky god of the sea, and the ever-morose Hades, lord of the underworld, who would prefer to be anywhere but here. Though Zeus ostensibly reigns supreme, the Olympian household is run with the managerial subtlety of an overly competitive board game night. Hera, who is both his sister and wife, an HR problem that Olympus HR must have found perplexing, frequently brings the domestic drama. Her pastime includes keeping an adorned and watchful eye on Zeus's extracurricular activities, because one celestial dalliance could historically lead to matrimonial strife. Ah, love. Immortal edition. Now let's pull back the curtain on a lesser-known tidbit. Their spirited volleyball matches in Olympus' opulent courtyard. This wasn't your average friendly gym class recreation. It was an event where the worthiness of their divine status hung in the balance with each serve and spike. Imagine Poseidon serving a divine ace with a splash of seawater, quite literally, much to everyone's cold and soggy amusement. The game's winning point often saw Apollo trying to charm the ladies from the sidelines with impromptu harp performances, arguably an ill-timed attempt given the speed of the sport, more Monty Python slapstick than Olympic feat. As we pivot our dream dial to the domestic harmony, or, might we say, divine debacles, Hephaestus, the smith god, comes swinging in, quite literally. Born to Hera, Hephaestus didn't quite meet Olympus's high standards of celestial panache, a fact Zeus gracelessly pointed out, leading to Hephaestus's unceremonious descent from Olympus. But like all great sagas, there's redemption in smithing. Hephaestus, with soot on his cheeks and sparks in his eyes, crafted weapons and trinkets of unparalleled beauty, indulging in creations that finally put a proud, if slightly begrudged, smile on Hera's face. His finest work? The golden net that caught two infamously amorous deities in a trap that would very nearly make reality television of lunar spirit. Picture Dionysus sneaking through the halls with a jug of wine and merriment in tow. Now here's a god who understood the art of turning water, or really anything fluid, into wine. His festivals, glistening with high spirits, pun intended, taught the ancients everything they knew about revelry and hangovers. He'd throw parties that would last months, possibly eons, leaving mortal revelers questioning whether their long nap in the vineyards was truly restorative sleep or accidental mythological time travel. As their narratives weave into ours, these gods and goddesses remind us of an ancient world alive with vibrant imagination and whimsical absurdity. Each story layers into an eternal tapestry, embroidered with exaggerations and embroidered even further with historical yarns fit for spinning wide eyes into sleepy orbs under the midnight glow. So, close your eyes and drift ever so softly, as if aboard a vessel gently rocked by Poseidon's calmest seas. Our journey is far from over, as the gentle wings of Hermes wisp us to the next tale, gracefully spiriting us into the labyrinth of sleep and dreams, where myths take root and grow ever so quietly in the garden of our minds. Sweet dreams, dear dreamer, for the tune of mythology shall continue its lullaby. In the drowsy glow of Mount Olympus, where misty clouds wrapped around the peaks like a comfortable blanket, the gods were having yet another meeting. The subject this time, the peculiar creature dubbed the Sphinx. Ah, the Sphinx, a blend of powers, mystery, and confusion wrapped up in one lion-bodied riddle machine. It was the ancient world's version of a puzzling crossword, minus the newspaper. The Sphinx, known for its personality, as intoxicating as an ancient potion with a touch too much wild herb, had taken up residence on a rock outside of Thebes. The local Thebans had, quite understandably, grown tired of its constant riddle harassment and had sent numerous requests to Zeus, some written, some in the form of frustrated sighs carried by the wind. The Sphinx's riddles ranged from the mildly amusing to the outright irksome, depending, of course, on one's tolerance for wordplay and imminent danger. Now, at a glance, one might wonder why such a creature existed at all. Historians argue that the Sphinx was a symbol of wisdom and protection in other cultures, but Olympian minds, with their flair for drama, saw it as a perfect encapsulation of a capricious pop quiz gone rogue. Imagine quiz nights, but every incorrect answer led to being gobbled up. Certainly a motivator for Thebans to pay attention. The gods debated, as they loved to do between sips of nectar. Should we intervene? Mused Athena, brushing an owl feather from her lap. Or leave this as a test, a minor annoyance meant to keep their minds sharp and on edge, like Pythagoras' math problems, with more snarling. Zeus, casually tossing thunderbolts like business cards, pondered the notion of Sphinx-related wisdom, sharpening versus, the option of simply living a less peril-infused life. But there was a certain charm in randomness. Imagine a world where everything made sense, utterly boring. Who would even need gods, really? And thus the Sphinx continued its stint on the mortal world stage, each riddle a gently menacing lullaby designed to remind mortals of their wit, or in many cases, their lack thereof. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 in the evening? It asked, its tail swishing like a metronome, ticking down to a potential doom. Of course, we all know the answer now. A human? Cryptic, yes, but logical in that mythological mindset. There was an uncanny warmth to the Sphinx's riddles if you survived them, like solving a most challenging Sudoku, but with higher stakes than just spousal bragging rights. The Thebans, to their credit, were growing ever cleverer. Some formed clubs, discussing riddles over grape juice, absorbing each question as if it were one of Dionysus's more experimental and consequently less coherent parties. Enter Oedipus, a most deserving hero of this strange tale. Oedipus, who from birth had a life story more tangled than 100 lyres' worth of harpstrings, found himself face to face with the problem-spouting beast. He, with a certainty that perhaps only someone living such an unabashedly mythic existence could muster, gave the Sphinx her answer. For a moment, silence. Then the creature, who had been mumbling to itself about investing in more complex conundrums, admitted defeat. And just like that, the Sphinx saw the wisdom in an epic career change, perhaps, as one likes to think, joining an ancient version of The Underworld's Got Talent with a new act, never boring, always surprising, and preferably less life-threatening. In the golden glow of late Olympus afternoon, as the woolly clouds grew thicker with approaching twilight, the gods applauded the Thebans' triumph of combining wit and survival, a feat as rare as a non-chaotic family banquet in Hera's presence. The echoes of laughter and debate gradually waned. While some mortals figured they'd miss the intellectual spar with the Sphinx, most were just pleased their daily commute was no longer an anxiety-riddled chore. They celebrated in homes, swapping stories of their victory by candlelight until sleep, as gentle as a goddess's kind whisper, closed their eyes. On those nights, even Mount Olympus seemed to settle into a glide of quiet contemplation, ready for the next tale that the fates had lined up. A story neither foreseen nor forgotten, waiting patiently at the horizon's edge, deep within the annals of Greek mythology, where gods and mortals mingle like raisins in the great oatmeal cookie of the cosmos. One figure stands out for his industrious, albeit somewhat misguided, dedication. Enter Sisyphus, the iconic overachiever of ancient Greece. Some might say he was a bit of a rock star. Sisyphus was a king, very much like your neighborhood history teacher, who lives for an eternal debate about whether Hadrian's Wall was, in fact, a fence, or maybe just the world's longest garden gnome deterrent. But unlike those diligent educators, Sisyphus had a knack for getting into trouble, specifically of the divine sort. You see, he was clever, a tad too clever for his own good. In the realm of gods and goddesses, being clever was about as welcome as a caffeinated unicorn at a nap competition. Now picture this, in a series of events best left to the imagination of small gossipy birds. Sisyphus managed to cheat death not once but twice. The first, seeming time, he tied up Thanatos, the personification of death. While Thanatos was off sharpening his collection of scythes, Hades had quite the grooming standard for his staff. Sisyphus nonchalantly walked back from the underworld, whistling a jaunty tune, perhaps something akin to I Will Survive. But hubris, much like using a bottomless mimosa menu at a century-old brunch, often leads to catastrophic consequences. Having eventually succumbed to a more orthodox demise, Sisyphus found himself back in the nether regions of Greek mythology's favorite tourist destination, Hades. The punishment for his cheeky attempts was something spectacular in its simplicity and eternal durability. His task was to roll a massive boulder up a hill, only to watch it play gravity's favorite game of back to start just before the summit. Imagine, if you will, this Sisyphean endeavor in action. Each morning, Sisyphus arrives at the base of the hill with his oversized stone companion, much like a commuter with an overpowering briefcase, staring down a stubbornly broken escalator. Oh, the joy of repetition. The hill looms, the boulder waits, and Sisyphus braces himself for another attempt at defying futility. The comedy, perhaps, lies not in the act itself, but in the relentless dedication of our dear Sisyphus, forever tackling what some might call the world's first CrossFit exercise. Now you may wonder, was the punishment of endlessly rolling a rock up a hill with zero progress a bit excessive? Here's the thing. Zeus, the CEO of Olympus Inc., was never known for subtlety. His approach to punishment was about as nuanced as introducing glitter to a library. It gets everywhere and stays forever. However, what makes Sisyphus's plight truly stand the test of time isn't just the amusing visuals or his eternally backfiring tenacity, but rather the philosophical musings it spawned. Generations have pondered the meaning of it all. Does endlessly rolling a boulder up a hill serve as a metaphor for life's own repetitive challenges? Or is it simply an ancient cosmological jibe at the futility of overthinking things? One can only ponder these grand questions while counting sheep. With Sisyphus's illustrious saga rolling comfortably towards infinity, you might let your thoughts drift to other whimsical tales snuggled within the grand tapestry of Greek myth. Imagine, if you will, what adventures await as myths unfurl like a cozy quilt around your drowsy mind. Ribbons of mythology are waiting to gently wrap themselves around the edges of your subconscious, ushering you into those blissful realms of rest. In a time not so long ago, if you weren't immortal or living on a high mountain with an unjustifiably breathtaking view, your job prospects were likely limited to something like pebble smoother or bronze lathe technician. But just when mortals began questioning whether life had more to offer than olive oil wrestling, along came Orpheus, a rising star in the ancient music scene. Yes, dear listener, we find ourselves now with Orpheus. Think of him as the Elvis of the lyre without the sequin jumpsuits. Now, Orpheus wasn't just any musician. He had the kind of voice that could make even the grumpiest of gods tap their celestial feet. Legend has it, his melody was so intoxicating that rivers reversed course to catch a better listen. Even the local boulders, known for being both emotionally and physically immovable, were said to shed a tear or two when he played. Orpheus had what some might call natural talent, making him the Spotify top artist of the ancient world. One day, amid strumming his lyre eloquently by a babbling brook, strictly for acoustic reasons, mind you, Orpheus met and fell in love with Eurydice, whose laughter could light up the darkest of underworlds. And while it seems falling in love beside a hypnotic music stream sounds perfect, please note the hidden dangers of Greek mythology dating. Namely, anything remotely romantic is typically followed by a tragic twist. Think of it as Zeus's way of keeping things interesting during the slower months. As fate and a rather sinister snake would have it, Eurydice's life was cut short, an act of celestial mischief, no doubt. The local fauna protested vehemently, wondering why tragedy seemed perpetually attracted to those with excellent bone structure and a penchant for walking through idyllic fields at sunset. Such was the sorrow of Orpheus that he dared to descend into the underworld to win back his beloved, a decision generally discouraged as it involved an unpleasant ferry ride with Charon, the grim ferryman with a chronic shortage of change. Orpheus, with his melodious charm, managed to persuade Hades and his queen, Persephone, the ultimate power couple of subterranean realms, to allow Eurydice's return to the living world. Their consent came with just one tiny condition. Orpheus must lead his wife out without looking back, a task so simple that it practically screamed for human error. If history taught us anything, it was not to rely too heavily on the odds when illogical genius and human curiosity collided. As they ascended, heartbeat echoing like percussion through caverns, Orpheus's mind, rewardingly curious and fatalistically heroic, mulled dramatic possibilities. Alas, just a few steps from the exit, with his heartbeat tuned to a fever-pitch aria, doubt overcame him. Was this silence behind him indicative of his love, or merely the echoey drafts favored by underworld real estate? Finally, unable to ignore his own theatrical proclivities, he glanced back, catching a fleeting glimpse of Eurydice, before she dissolved back into shadows more elusive than sleep's wisp of consciousness. Thus, Orpheus lamented, returning alone to the earthly realm, but gifting future centuries myriad love songs, profound and catchy enough to ensure his legacy would inspire writers from Homer to the latest indie band whose name you can't pronounce. Through tragedy, the line that separated the minstrelsy and humanity dissolved, leading to crucial revelations about heart and harmony. As you drift deeper into the sonorous lull of this narrative, your own dreams may weave with those elements of loss and hope, remembering that music, like sleep, finds its harmony in the spaces between. And so, as the lyre's gentle resonances fade into the moonlit shadows, we shall now wander into another tale, where reverie and myth await with open arms and a faint smile, gently guiding us onward as the evening winds down and the Greek myths continue to serenade you into slumber. Let us wander into the curious life of Hestia, the goddess you probably forgot existed, but who held the keys to the heart of Mount Olympus. Quite literally. She was the goddess of the hearth, a modest title, but one that came with unparalleled significance in both divine and mortal realms. Now, don't allow her seemingly straightforward domain fool you. In the Greek pantheon, home is where the hearth is, and Hestia was the unassuming heart among the thunderous personalities of her Olympian siblings. Picture this, a realm where every household fireside was essentially a franchise under Hestia's name. There was no need for supermarkets in ancient Greece. Instead, families convened around the magical warmth of the hearth, sharing stories and pressing their bread against the fire. Hearth bread, it's like sourdough, but with more nostalgic deities floating around in invisible, mythological clouds. With her dedication to family values and domestic harmony, Hestia had to deal with the divine equivalent of what we would call drama at work. Her brother Zeus might have been busy wielding lightning bolts, but that didn't make the familial Sunday brunches any less chaotic. Hestia often played the neutral referee, ensuring brother Poseidon didn't flood the dining room every time he became irked about seating arrangements or when Hera tried to insert her wisdom on marital bliss, which was often met with a chorus of eye rolls from those in attendance. Despite all this, Hestia managed her responsibilities without ever feeling the need to stir up headline-making adventures or power squabbles. While the others were embroiled in titanic clashes or epic quests that made for tantalizing tales, Hestia was hard at work, ensuring that the flickering flames of the hearth never faltered. She quietly ignited the spirits of those around her, and in a world where order was as unpredictable as a minotaur in a maze, stability was perhaps the greatest magic of all. Now, you might think that as the goddess of the hearth, Hestia led a rather stationary life. However, the drama of Olympus often came to find her. Her original seat on the Council of Mount Olympus was generously offered to Dionysus, the roaring life of the eternal celestial party, because nothing says family love like giving up your throne for a younger nephew with a penchant for grapes. In true Hestia fashion, she stepped aside gracefully. It correlated well with her preference for a peaceful existence, continuing to carry the fire of home within her, allowing her to remain forever inclusive in the sphere of divine family gossip. And what's a Greek myth without a twist of irony? Here's where things really simmered down charmingly. Those who stayed true to their hearths were graced by Hestia herself. Perhaps this humility and dedication to unheralded service invoke a peaceful dream upon you. Simply knowing that somewhere in the canny folklore of history, a goddess opted to sip chamomile and cradle her sanctum for eternity, other demi-urgencies notwithstanding, ushers a simple lesson folded into myth. Simplicity is its own brand of divine wisdom. As you gently drift off into realms of reverie, perhaps you'll float into the flame-lit halls of Hestia's domain, feeling the warmth and closeness that the old world's hearth would endow upon every night. Her story stitches seamlessly into the tapestry of myth, a soothing lull in the orchestral chaos of Greek lore. So lay back, suffused in the calm glow of history's coziest goddess, as another chapter of this ancient tale flickers to a close. Somewhere, just around the bend of this dreamy horizon, other stories wait patiently, murmuring secrets in gentle tones, ready to be unveiled with the break of the next tale. But for now, may your thoughts be as settled and serene as the steady warmth of a hearth's embrace. In the heart of Mount Olympus, where the gods often sat around debating whose toga was whiter or who had the best divine hairstyle, there existed tales that even the all-knowing Zeus sometimes forgot. As we ease into the myth of King Midas, let us drape ourselves in golden tales, but with less of the golden touch and more of the gilded giggles. Once upon a not-so-arranged timeline, there existed a king named Midas. Now, Midas was your typical ancient royal with typical royal hobbies, like counting his absurdly large collection of gold and ensuring his beard gleamed like the morning sun. Some say he had a mildly unhealthy obsession with wealth. Others argue this is the natural expectation when your best friends are gold coins with little faces. And maybe it was this royal penchant for the bling that amused the gods enough to grant them ample storytelling fodder. One day, Dionysus, the god of wine and good times, found himself in a mortal predicament of sorts. His dear companion, a satyr named Silenus, had gone astray, probably lured by the promise of robust vintages or catching one too many midday rays. Silenus, plush with wine-given wisdom, had fallen asleep in King Midas's beloved rose garden, nestled comfortably between the bushes and blooms, snoring in a symphony that rivaled any noted bard's lute. Midas, on one of his garden strolls, discovered the snoozing satyr and, choosing to channel his inner Airbnb host, treated Silenus with hospitality, worthy of a minor god 5-star review. In gratitude, Dionysus offered Midas anything his gilded heart desired. Here, dear listener, is where you'd expect a reasonable ask like a lifetime supply of wine, truly a rational choice when dealing with Dionysus, or perhaps a simple blessing of perpetual good luck. But no, King Midas wished for the power to turn everything he touched into gold. Imagine, if you will, the good god Dionysus, possibly bemused, certainly bemused, and surely in need of a grape cocktail. He granted this golden wish, probably thinking, what's the worst that could happen? Perchance a thoughtful chuckle or two followed. The next morning, Midas awoke, giddy like an over-caffeinated ancient coffee goat. With a reckless curiosity, he reached for the bedside table, transforming his simple wooden furniture into dazzling golden trinkets. He marveled at his breakfast, turning hearty meals into elaborate but inedible golden sculptures. Culinary art, indeed. King Midas sauntered through his palace, embracing his fanciful dream of turning everything shiny enough to attract the mightiest magpies. That is until he attempted something as mundane as a hug. When his beloved daughter turned into an ornate, human-like statue, truly the least interactive playmate imaginable, the gravity of his wish, and the folly therein, finally dawned upon him like a tale from Homeric woes, only much shinier. Panicking, Midas beseeched Dionysus, who kindly noted that all that glitters is not comprehensively thought through. The god instructed Midas to wash himself in the river Pactolus, a gentle and glistening stream known for washing away ill-conceived gold-tinted desires. Following this hydrous absolution, the river became enriched with gold indeed, and Midas was left with the humbler realization of genuine human and satyr touch, delightedly reverse-touched into their natural states. But to Midas's unsurprising discovery, happiness is not tightly intertwined with wealth or the perpetual shimmer of metal, but rather in the simpler joys, like a daughter's hug or a friend's laugh, evoked with wise satyr merriment. This tale of cautionary sparkle and fleeting fortune concludes as a reminder to all dreamers and gold enthusiasts alike. Sometimes it's the subtle joys of the mundane that truly illuminate our lives. As we drift away from Midas and his now goldenless kingdom, a gentle whisper calls us towards another chapter of meandering myths and mythological mishaps. Close your eyes, dear dreamer of stories, for a gentle river of tales awaits to carry you into further slumbers. In the quiet, moonlit halls of Greek mythology, there lies a certain creature whose identity has often slipped through the pages as easily as a drop of honey from a Greek pastry, Cerberus, the three-headed guard dog of the underworld. But tonight, my dear drowsy listener, prepare to embark on a gentle exploration of this hulking canine conundrum and his questionable daycare provider, Hades. You see, Cerberus wasn't always the fearsome fluffball patrolling the river Styx. Legend has it, he was once a mere pup with simple ambitions, to chew on a bone and maybe, on a wild weekend, chase a Persephone or two. With fur as dark as a midnight blanket and eyes that gleamed a shade of, "Don't wake me." He was the original boy-in-a-blanket fort, if that fort were a subterranean lair of eternal gloom. But the duly note of interest lies in his skills of multitasking. 3 heads are better than 1, they'd say, especially when it comes to ensuring none of the dearly departed slipped past without a good old bark-off. Each head had its own personality, the dreamer, the schemer, and, unfortunately, the incessant howler. His employer, Hades, was more than a simple god of the dead. More accurately, he resembled an underappreciated middle manager of the hereafter, donning his invisibility hat, a Greek precursor to the hooded ebony sweatshirt, while managing grievances from the 2 chatty nymphs of Asphodel. He had a business to run, souls to keep, and siblings with questionable ethics to appease. Hades, fascinated by the new bark technology, stood watching Cerberus like a dog lover at a park, silently comparing him to his brother Zeus's eagle or Poseidon's dolphins. You see, even gods have sibling rivalries, and pet competitions were a favorite. Why settle for one when you can have 3, was Hades' motto, etched in bronze or perhaps gold if internal memos are to be believed. There's a particularly endearing myth that sometimes slips past the grandiose tales of how Orpheus, the poet not known for obeying petting prohibited signs, serenaded Cerberus with music so sweet that all three heads collectively sighed, shutting 9 eyes in blissful harmony. Even the schemer gave up scheming for an occasional daydream of running freely through the fields of Elysium, ears flopping joyously, while embraces of sound waves lulled the underappreciated pup to a rare tranquility. During such musical escapades, Hades would take a brief stroll along the shadowy banks of Lethe, perhaps murmuring to himself, "If only I could leave my invisible cap at home." But let's not digress into Hades' fashion quandary tonight. Now, as we drift closer to dreamland, let us ponder one last riddle. What dreams may come to a dog with 3 heads, each laying on a cushion of cosmic fleece, toying with the infinite possibilities of existential fetch? Maybe it's the tantalizing scent of ambrosia, or chasing a proverbial mailman across the mysterious fields of Tartarus. And so, with gentle humor nestled between legend and the creaky mythic ledger, we pause our twilight tour through history. Cerberus once again resumes his watch, each head snuggled in blissful trifecta. As we close our eyes and whisper goodnight to the old stories and the eerie, echoing halls of memory, we prepare to step lightly into the next realm of tale and slumber, where the murmur of long-forgotten myths and gentle snores beckon with soft allure. In the soft, slumberous hillsides of yesteryear's Greece, where the olive trees whisper secrets only the night winds dare carry, there once lived a tale of a rather curious affair, set not in the tempestuous heavens of the gods, but in the ever-curious battlefield of a festival. Imagine, if you will, an ancient wine festival. The Panathenaic wine and cheese soiree, not the most famous of gatherings, but one that stirred as much drama as Dionysus at a wedding party. The guests of honor that year were Demeter and Hades, an odd pairing indeed. One graced the lands with wheat and grain, while the other preferred his kingdoms beneath the earth, and had a dreadful habit of harping on about pomegranate seeds. Demeter never liked these social events much, given that she always outshined when it came to cereal crops and enthralling lectures on the virtues of kale. On this particular occasion, someone, a mortal caught in a narrative as complex as a Byzantine plot, had decided to organize an underworld agrarian mixer. The idea was to bridge the divide between the fertility gods and those divine residents who preferred a more subterranean lifestyle. And so, under the jovial pretext of consuming copious amounts of wine and debating the virtues of goat cheese versus feta, these divine beings were to find common ground. Hermes played the DJ naturally. It's said he threw in a zesty lyre solo or two just to keep things interesting. Aphrodite, meanwhile, was people watching with her usual flair, assessing pairings that might venture into the realm of romance, or at least minor entanglements. You see, she had a reputation for being the ultimate celestial matchmaker, even if those matches sometimes involved more arrows and fewer stable relationships. Eros was busy contemplating which mythological gossip to start just for Cupid's arrow-honed antics. Perhaps it was this particular junction of divine and mortal mischief that lit flickers of intrigue and paved the path for Zeus to stride. Yes, Zeus attended, crashing any event like a Perseid meteor shower. His tendency to shapeshift into amorous birds at parties did much to enliven, or perhaps complicate, the proceedings. Amidst this vibrant crowd, clad in chitons that fluttered like moths dancing to ambrosial tunes, Hades found himself in possession of a rather confounding goblet of nectar. What was grape juice to a denizen of the underworld became a peculiar delight. Demeter, watching him awkwardly navigate this plane of exuberance, seized the opportunity to make small talk, much to the delight of the attending mortals who had an affinity for airs of mystical gossip. "So," Demeter began, her voice as soothing as a wheat field swaying in a summer's breeze, "have you thought of integrating more seasonal vegetation in your domains?" Hades, ever the charmer in a wilted black toga, looked up from his goblet. "Ah, yes, dear sister. My latest addition is atmospheric moss." Quite morbidly delightful, I must say. The gods were legendary for their squabbles and plotting, painting scenarios of splendid absurdity across this celestial canvas. But in these humble moments, they shared something raw, something akin to a divine game of fish out of water. It was a subtle reminder that even in the realm of myths, gods found joy in everyday oddities, much to their own grudging amusement. As the night waned and stars peeked shyly behind the lavender curtain of a Grecian dusk, the mingling of gods and mortals winded down. Dionysus took a deep bow, acknowledging the acclaim of every amphora, emptied and heart-lightened with laughter. Mortals stumbled home under the gentle persuasion of wine, while the gods returned to their heavenly perches or subterranean abodes, contemplating the curious mortal penchant for camaraderie and cheese. But sleep is not simply the domain of mortals. Oh no. It wraps everyone in its quietude, from gods inspecting stars to mortals dreaming of myths. As night draws its velvety curtains across the firmament, dream gently of the tales yet to unfold, an odyssey captured between the lines, awaiting on the horizon, promising the delicate wonders of myths spun anew. In the dreamy recesses of Greek mythology, where gods and mortals dance to the tune of destiny, lies a tale told in whispers of the night, the curious affair of Pandora and her rather infamous box, or, more accurately, jar. Yes, dear listener, it was indeed a jar, for Greek language purists out there, but let us not quibble over details when there are fates to be tempted and chaos to unfurl. Pandora, as myth would have it, was crafted by Hephaestus, the divine artisan of Olympus, under the watchful eye of Zeus, who was perhaps in one of his more creatively mischievous moods. It was Zeus, after all, who deemed it wise to bestow upon humanity the first woman with a penchant for curiosity. Yet, let us not jump to hasty conclusions about her curiosity being a flaw. Rather, it was a mere spark of divine intrigue. Gifted by gods with attributes both unique and perplexing, Pandora was a marvel, a celestial compilation of traits ranging from the logical Athena's wisdom to Aphrodite's beguiling beauty. You might say she was the very first influencer, except her viral moment would lead to a bit more than trending hashtags and surplus followers. With a charmingly insouciant smile and sparkling eyes that could rival even Zeus's lightning, Pandora was sent among men with this mysterious jar and an equally mysterious prohibition not to open it. One day, when the sun lazily yawned and cast its sleepy glow over the earth, the nagging whisper of curiosity tickled Pandora's ear. The jar, with its promise of untold secrets, beckoned her with an enchantment that even the muses would find irresistible. After a moment of indecisive pacing, like a shopper in a particularly perplexing aisle of Greek moral dilemmas, Pandora succumbed. Upon a seemingly innocent twist of the lid, Pandora released into the world all manner of trouble, sickness, despair, taxes, or so it feels, and calamities you couldn't return with a sales receipt. But, as the myths often remind us in their epically roundabout way, all was not lost. For at the bottom of this jar of woes crouched a singular shining promise. Hope, unscathed by the pandemonium and Pandoramonium whirling above it. Hope emerged as the uninvited yet entirely necessary guest at this mythical party of misfortune. While there's much scholarly debate about why hope was included and what it represents, it's perhaps a reminder or a constitutional requirement for optimistic storytelling. It offered, in any case, a softer landing for humanity's freshly troubled playpen. It's worth imagining, if only for amusement's sake, the potential for a not-so-great marketing campaign by the Olympians. Pandora's jar, bringing you trouble since antiquity, but with hope. Offer not valid in any eternal planes where Greek gods do not reign. And yet, within the brilliance of this myth lies a delicate truth about human nature, that no difficulty is insurmountable when viewed through the lens of hope and the occasional divine oversight. As Pandora gazed upon the havoc unwittingly unleashed, she found solace not in despair, but in the glimmer of that inconspicuous hope remaining in her mostly empty jar. Perhaps it was the god's way of suggesting that a little bit of trouble with a touch of optimism could serve as an enchanting, albeit unpredictable, recipe for resilience. And so, in the gentle aftermath of her misjudged leap into curiosity's embrace, Pandora played the forgotten role of a pioneer of hope, leaving behind a small, albeit hazardous, legacy that even Achilles might tiptoe around. Cocooned within this blend of wonder and wistfulness, the tale of Pandora's curiosity softly lulls you away, like the mythical Argonauts guided by the stars. The journey of myths, tender and timeless, plats seamlessly into the tapestry of night, preparing you for what new chapters of Olympus unfold as the stories continue to shed their golden glow upon the night that cradles you towards dream-laden realms. As the gentle embrace of the night deepens, we drift into the ever-curious realm of Greek artisanship, the creation of the labyrinth. Now I know what you're thinking. A labyrinth? Sleep-inducing? Why yes, dear listener, when you consider that its creator, Daedalus, became the father of complex problem-solving, and also of Icarus, which is a totally separate bedtime tale involving waxwings and inept sky-high aspirations. Once upon an ancient time on the dreamy island of Crete, King Minos was in quite a kerfuffle. He had a pet problem, literally. Minos' wife, under the influence of the gods and their unpredictable sense of humor, had taken a liking to a majestic bull. The resultant offspring wasn't something you'd see on an idyllic country pasture. This was the Minotaur, a creature with the head of a bull and the temperament of a particularly grumpy houseguest. He liked to munch on locals, you see, which is generally not great for community morale. In steps Daedalus, the MacGyver of Greek myth, tasked with finding a solution to house the Minotaur while boosting Crete's tourism appeal. "Think of the postcards!" Minos might have exclaimed. So Daedalus famously designed a labyrinth so bewildering that even the most adventurous traveler would turn on their heel and declare the trail too convoluted for even the most compelling Instagram story. Picture it, a cozy network of meandering corridors, winding paths, and dead ends. Built by Daedalus, it was more a reflection of Greek bureaucracy than a glorified maze. Travelers would come in droves, only to find themselves quite lost while trying to locate a celebrated corner or a Mediterranean view, only to end up face to face with a snoring minotaur. Hence, a place designed for tranquility inadvertently ensured you got your cardio for the day. And just when you think you've wandered through every conceivable wrong turn, the story twists with the entrance of Theseus, the Athenian prince with a hero complex, armed not with a sword, but with yarn. Yes, dear listeners, yarn. Imagine the frustration of Hercules when Theseus chose the contents of Gran's knitting basket over a trusty, heavy blade. Yet, these crafty decisions ended up being mightier than any sword. Theseus, cleverly taking advice from Ariadne, Minos' daughter, who, let's be honest, was just smitten enough to give away her best crafting materials, used the ball of yarn to navigate the labyrinth. Talk about a multidisciplinary approach. He unwound it as he went in, pleasing Daedalus with his practical problem-solving skills, slayed the Minotaur with all the subtlety of removing a particularly aggressive garden gnome, and rewound his path to sunny freedom. Alas, like many Greek myths, the tale involves some deep-seated family drama. The Icarus situation unfolds soon after, combining Daedalus' engineering skills with his penchant for defying physics. But back in the labyrinth, everything and everyone was eerily quiet. The hero escaped, the Minotaur was no more, and Daedalus was left patting himself on the back for creating one of the earliest known architectural marvels to include surprise, fierce bovine-themed encounters. And as you wander the corridors of memory these tales paint, it's worth pondering. If Daedalus were alive today, would he be masterminding complex building codes or calmly living as a minimalist with an appreciation for puzzles? Just imagine him with an Etsy shop, postcards and all. And now, as we gently float away from the enticing enigma of the labyrinth, slumber calls quietly like an invitation down another path. Close your eyes, dear voyager, For our journey continues through ancient stories, with each step leading us deeper into the cradle of myth and dream. As the stars twinkle over ancient Greece and the warm Mediterranean breeze rustles through olive trees, let us embark on a lullaby of tales that will smoothly cradle you into the realm of Hypnos, the god of sleep. Tonight, our gentle wanderings bring us to the tale of Bellerophon and his trusty winged steed Pegasus, a pair as famous for their celestial antics as they are for their earthly troubles. Our story flutters back to the dusty roads of Corinth, where Bellerophon, the valiant yet slightly naive hero, found himself entangled in an exquisite misadventure. The scent of figs and ancient secrets filled the air, as Bellerophon was, quite innocuously, given the task of defeating the Chimera, a fearsome creature famous for being as incongruously assembled as a mythological jigsaw puzzle, sporting the head of a lion, the body of a goat, and a acorn tail of a serpent. Now one might wonder, why would such a monstrous oddity come to be? Simply put, Greek myths were the original cocktail mixers, taking a dash of this beast, a sprinkle of that creature, and shaking them in a historical shaker until something utterly terrifying and often impractical popped out. Back to Bellerophon, this amiable fellow was not one to easily admit defeat. After all, when handed a task akin to solving a Rubik's Cube made of roaring beasts, what could possibly go wrong? Fortunately, Bellerophon believed in asking for divine intervention, not unlike beseeching a celestial customer service line. And who better than the tantalizing goddess Athena to guide our befuddled hero? In a dream as ethereal as a whisper, Athena bestowed upon Bellerophon a golden bridle, simply saying the words that all great heroes love to hear in mythological bedtime stories. Catch Pegasus, and things might just go swimmingly. Spoiler alert, they'd fly rather than swim. With stars shimmering above, Bellerophon managed to lasso Pegasus, the most renowned flying horse to ever toss its mane under the Greek firmament. Now, Pegasus wasn't just another mythical horse you'd find grazing in your reveries. This steed was born from the blood of Medusa, alongside his brother, Chrysaor, who was, unfortunately, assigned to carry a golden sword rather than the gift of flight. Sometimes, it seems, siblings just don't get the same magical perks. Together, Bellerophon and Pegasus soared the skies with feats that would even make Icarus approve, reaching a height that took them neck and neck with the gods themselves, until a new, peculiar problem arose, rooted not in Olympus, but in the weaving hands of earthly politics. Politely ushered into the realms of eternal myth, Bellerophon and his flying companion endured a list of blunders only heroes with their heads in the clouds could truly boast, including a political game of hot potato as kings traded, him off like the last slice of ambrosia pie, each hoping the Chimera would solve the Bellerophon problem for them, once and for all. But alas, our winged duo eventually bested the Chimera, proving that wit, wings, and a solid dose of luck can tackle even the most absurd mythic beast, and that gold bridles truly do hold the key to soaring past life's challenges, monster or otherwise. Post-Chimera, Bellerophon's fortune took a turn, as it so often does in Greek mythology, and, feeling a bit high from victory, decided that Olympus might make a fine summer home. So, up he went with Pegasus, aiming to pay an impromptu visit to the gods, perhaps even chat with Zeus over thunderbolt tea. Alas, Zeus, in his wisdom and perhaps protective of his own laurel-laden serenity, sent a gadfly to nip Pegasus, causing our high-flying hero to tumble earthward, a cautionary tale that perhaps even celestial Airbnb needs a reservation. Humility and earthbound, Bellerophon spent his remaining days contemplatively wandering, likely musing on feats past and clouds unawaited, until, shimmering above in a sky kissed by starlight, Pegasus was transformed into a constellation. And to this day, the winged horse dances across the heavens, a sparkling reminder that some tales, like good myths, are better left gently penned in the night sky. And so, as our mythical bedtime story whispers away on the gentle night breeze, allow your thoughts to float softly on the wings of dreams, until we greet again for another chapter beneath the velvet canopy of the cosmos. As our journey through Greek mythology meanders on like a lazy river, perfect for a midnight sail, our myths bring us to the stage of Dionysus, where chaos dances with delight and a grape is never just a grape, it's a promise of revelry. Picture, if you will, the god of wine, yet also the purveyor of theatre, a heady concoction of vines and rhymes. Dionysus, with his ever so charming entourage, traipses through history like a merry envoy of bacchanalian fun. This lively fellow carries with him a curious narrative, the story of King Midas and the Golden Touch, a tale where every dream of excess, quite literally, turns to gold. Our story begins under a lush vine at the edge of the world. King Midas, a man notable for his great wealth and even greater thirst for more of it, hospitably entertained Dionysus's beloved companion, Silenus, who had drowned one amphora too many. In gratitude, Dionysus offered Midas a wish. Now Midas, having the type of foresight one might expect from a magpie in a jewelry store, requested that everything he touched turn to gold. What a golden opportunity, or at least, it seemed so at the time. With a whisper of magic easily mistaken for a champagne fizz, his wish was granted. Midas marveled at his new golden wealth. A rose petal became a golden trinket, a pebble morphed into a nugget, his favorite goblet turned solid gold, right before it hit his lip with a rather regrettable thud. There it was, only a single sip away. The realization that sometimes too much of a good thing is simply too much. As Midas's breakfast quickly transmuted into the world's heaviest cereal, it dawned on him that while gold may glitter, it was notably lacking in nutritional value. His golden touch was both his richest fortune and his heaviest plight. In a fit of hunger and artistic irony, he reached out to embrace his daughter, and alas, she too became frozen in golden antiquity. It was then Midas truly grasped the weight of his wish, heavier than any pile of gold ever could be. Panicked and desperate, his heart resonating like a leaden bell, Midas begged Dionysus to reverse what was now a curse. With a twinkle of amusement and a swirl of kindness, the god assented, instructing Midas to wash away his power in the river Pactolus. This marked, quite charmingly I might add, the birth of a newfound wisdom among gold-thirsty kings and remarkably sparkly riverbeds. As Midas dabbled in the philosophical transformation of burden to wisdom, let us tiptoe into the realm of the Muses. These 9 divine whisperers pranced through the annals of creativity, striking inspiration like melodic lightning into the hearts of artists and thinkers alike. At their head was Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, quite often confused with an elaborate steam organ of similar name and dramatic flair. Each muse holding the rein to a particular realm: history, comedy, tragedy, dance, and even the kind of astronomy that would have professional stargazers nodding in agreement. They served as beacons for mortal minds, aspiring to capture a hint of the divine, which was quite the symphony of ambitions, interwoven throughout time itself. As we glide over history's sea, sail anchored by a gentle night breeze, carrying hints of ambrosial laughter and the ever-present hum of an ancient lyre, let us send a wink to old Hesiod and Homer, who penned their dreams under guiding muses, their verses sculpting the scaffoldings upon which myths and truths dangle, like laundry airing under a gentle Mediterranean sun. With these celestial whispers melding into the realms of art, we drift upon a path of musings and misadventures that stitched the expansive cultural tapestry of old. The muses, cheerfully choreographing the dance of past and present, became the gentle caretakers of creativity's hearth, softly tending to the spark within every soul, strumming a lyre or penning a verse. So, as we softly turn from the glow of gold back to the glow of the stars, stretch out, let your eyelids weigh heavy, and we shall soon embark on another whispered journey under the timeless gaze of the Greek firmament, where dreams are woven, and gods may play upon the strings of fate and fiddle with the fabric of the human heart. While most of us have heard about the legendary trials and tribulations of Hercules, his cousin, Euphorbus, perhaps took life a tad less heroically. Nonetheless, Euphorbus remains an unsung legend of improvisation and avoidance, with every bit as much stamina, though mainly used for napping. Let us dim the lights of Olympus and drift into this tale of sly wit and gravity-defiant relaxation. Long before the promise of 8-hour workdays existed, Euphorbus discovered groves of serenity among Greece's bustling myths. His legendary naps were as renowned as the ravine-liquefying roars of Cerberus. Legend has it that Euphorbus once napped through a minor skirmish until dusk merely by fortifying his tent with a sign that read, "Hero at rest, do not disturb," a phrase that miraculously kindled mellowness in even the fiercest of Spartan warriors. You see, Euphorbus embodied a simple truth: there's heroism in restfulness. While Zeus hurled thunderbolts left and right like an ancient lightning philanthropist, Euphorbus invented the fine art of cloud watching. He'd beckon fellow gods to join him on Olympus's misty balcony, pointing out clouds in the shapes of minotaurs or satirical banana peel sketches. Some say that his divination of a chariot-shaped cloud above the horizon possibly inspired the Trojans' fabled wooden equivalent. Well, either that or Zeus's ill-advised woodworking attempt. But Euphorbus was not merely resigned to his lazier laurels. In his most famous quest, he managed to acquire an entire herd of cattle from the Cyclops by convincing the one-eyed brute that it was international trade all your cattle for a bed day. Euphorbus was promptly caught, yet when faced with the Cyclops' outrage, he refused to be daunted. Instead, a brilliantly crafted diplomatic slumber soon saved his skin, convincing the Cyclops that, truly, it had always been the giant's bedtime exercise wardrobe collection. Our leisurely legend's influence didn't end there. As Homer sweetly spun tales decorated in heroic hardship, Euphorbus dallied in the fine art of culinary history. Discovery, for example, that a grape's noble purpose extended far beyond Dionysian revelries, having implications in jam and, more importantly, in loaf-based concoctions for breakfast feasts, was widely attributed to Euphorbus. For alongside wisdom, bread and grape jam significantly soothed the soul. His passion for leisurely pursuits aside, Euphorbus's most notable rival came in the form of his own shadow, an ever-present reminder that even during the longest siestas, time inches faithfully onward, demanding our dreams become actions. Occasionally, when not asleep, he'd chase his shadow around his villa, holding solemn debates over whether the westward sun thought it was exceptionally clever finding a doppelganger to haunt him so. Alas, the shadow never gave answers. Though the elegance of Euphorbus's approaches might, in a way, lack the flash and glam of labors or labyrinths, he, as an understated ambassador of tranquility, managed to reflect a different flavor of heroic integrity. The subtle, yet profound, triumph in delay, laziness, and peace was unexpected, yet far-reaching. As our tale of Euphorbus gently calms its tempo, let us take a cleansing breath, allowing his saga to inspire us to embrace both our productive side and the glorious repose so often missed in life's busy race. The next thread of our mythological voyage waits just upon the horizon, with gentle tides ready to guide our sails toward new adventures. As we drift to the cusp of discovery, lulled by ancient breezes and history's whispers, let's allow the dreams to grow in their nighttime soil, awaiting bloom in the story's unfolding pages. As our sleepy narrative continues to wind through the ancient Greek dramaturgical fields, we find ourselves beholding the rather peculiar life of Orpheus, a man whose music was so divine that even the musically challenged harpies might have pledged their feathery allegiance had they not been busy squawking about tales of resentment and miserable weather forecasts. Orpheus was the son of Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, because really, who wouldn't expect an epic tale to burst into song at any inconvenient moment? Perhaps it was in the hopes of preventing overly dramatic pantomime among the pantheon. Orpheus soon gained an ear-bending reputation for charming all manners of creatures, from humans to rocks, with the melodious strums of his lyre. So enchanting was his music, local cats hearkened from the fields just to offer a round of thunderous, albeit offbeat applause, tails swishing in newfound aria appreciation. Love struck hard and fast for Orpheus, like a bolt from Zeus on an impromptu smiting, as he fell for the lovely Eurydice. Hers was a beauty so profound, even Narcissus reportedly took a few moments to admire someone else for a change. Of course, Greek tragedies being what they are, disaster was always lurking one banana peel slip away. Eurydice met her end rather unceremoniously, thanks to a venomous snake, which was perhaps just frustrated at Orpheus for not tuning his lyre more than anything. In a world where detours to the underworld were hardly recommended by travel agencies, Orpheus, armed with nothing more than his trusty lyre and perhaps an overly optimistic travel brochure, decided to retrieve his beloved from Hades himself. As one might expect, an audience with the Lord of the Underworld typically required more than just strumming a few chords. Yet Orpheus managed to soothe even Cerberus, the three-headed canine custodian of the underworld, into a sleepy lull, an encounter that likely sparked an obscure branch of behaviorist theories on soothing multi-headed pets with calming canine classics. Arriving before Hades and his fun-loving consort Persephone, Orpheus played, pouring all the grief-stricken beauty into his music. Even the otherwise stoic Hades was moved to derisive tears, though he insisted it was just dry underworld air irritating his eyes, in a rare show of theatrical leniency, or perhaps just wishing for a break from Orpheus's musical melancholy. Hades agreed to re-release Eurydice under one pivotal condition. Orpheus must not glance back at her until they escaped the world above. One can imagine the gods placing bets on Orpheus's likelihood of following through on such a stipulation, with Hermes maybe hedging his bets using winged sandals instead of currency. As they ascended, the temptation was plain, like an unopened retsina, pheromones of anxiety thrust upon him by curiosity. Alas, as humans are wont to do in tales of yore, he glanced back at the last moment, lost to proverbial mid-movie spoilers. And with that fleeting gaze, Eurydice slipped away, like a metaphorical metaphor, lamenting its own poetic fate, leaving Orpheus to wallow in eternal regret and the shattered remains of a love song unfinished. One might ask, as Orpheus returned to earthly plains, whether he could have composed further sonnets of hope and heartbreak. Instead, he grew weary of the blistering human condition, serenading woodland creatures and ancient nymphs with melodies so poignant even trees, who normally had the best poker faces, seemed to sway mournfully in rhythm. Such poignant refrains were born out of solitude, whispering his legacy to unborn bards and unsuspecting forest fauna alike. The tales of amorous endeavors and musical magic danced through Athens, marking Orpheus not just as an epic love song but, for better or worse, as an asterisk in the curious, endless footnotes of Greek mythology. Yet tonight, as echoes of lyre strings float amidst these ethereal dreams, let us ponder what songs reside still in hearts unburdened by myth or legend. In the dimming twilight, a gentle melody carries onward, a sonorous hint of what awaits in tales further unwound as we prepare to traverse our final murmured chapter. As the soothing twilight descends upon our weary travelers, it's time to visit the quintessential grand finale of Greek mythology, a delight akin to the extra scoop of tzatziki when you're not quite full. Let us gently twine the intricate threads of gods and mortals into the comfortable tapestry of history, where myth sways gracefully between the realms of truth and telling a really good story at the amphitheater. Picture now a banquet in Olympus, still going strong, despite the Zeus-ordered, early bedtime edict that was likely ignored. The divine lot is gathered, lounging on their ambiguously comfortable thrones, which are really just cloud-draped lazyboys of mythic proportion. Here, Athena occasionally pauses her tactical discussion, and Hera ensures not one immortal forgets her impressively detailed guest list. Feathered harps lightly hum in the background as Apollo tunes his lyre, which, funnily enough, requires more maintenance than one might expect for an instrument designed by a demigod. The muses swap stories themselves, tempting Calliope to pen what surely would have been the Greek version of a Hollywood blockbuster franchise, but for analytic constraints. Those theater stages only allowed so many costume changes after all. But wait, there is Hermes, our wing-footed courier, darting among them with news of the mundane, yet always finding ways to spin the day's mortal follies into comedic tales of heroism and tragedy. Just this morning, a farmer from Thebes stumbled upon the hero's discarded armor and now insists he's found an ancient relic of some irreproachable archaeological significance. Meanwhile, somewhere in the labyrinthine recesses beneath Zeus's chair, Hephaestus busily arranges a fireworks display to celebrate the 11th successful conquest of Troy, historical irony notwithstanding. Let us not forget Dionysus, who may or may not have been the finest connoisseur of blended grapes, and who raised the stakes of storytelling to ever more flamboyant and, consequently, sleep-inducing tears. It is said that after one particularly vibrant symposium, the revelers nodded to sleep in their own laurels of drowsy, amused epiphanies, only to awake in vines of their own contentment with no tiger-drawn chariots in sight. All the while, the eternal ticking of the celestial clock gives hints of closing curtains. Through the anemoi, gentle breezes drift downwards, whispering secrets only the olive trees might hear, those silent historians of many an argument between a god and his arch-nemesis, logic. But now, dear listener, just as our chapter reaches a tranquil conclusion, cast your gaze earthwards, where mortals lay, dreaming of gods cavorting among the stars. Perhaps Zeus as a cowherd, or Persephone, crafting an eternal doodle in the meadows of Elysium. Little do the dreamers know the fates weave and snip their threads with the practiced hands of master crocheters, the ultimate display of power sleepwear naturally. And so, dear seeker of ancient tales and bearer of bedtime wisdom, we find ourselves swaying gently into the cadence of sleep, wrapped in the warm embrace of stories well told. Let the Sandman be your guide now, as Greek mythology herself waves you softly onward into dreamscapes where Perseus makes pancakes for breakfast and Socrates imagines the universe over a cup of rewarming ambrosia. For here, at the end of our mythic journey, rest easy in the knowledge that gods and myths may sleep, but they are always ready to wake when next you call them. But first, let dreams of tranquil seas and the whisper of olive groves escort you through the night, dear listener, as we bid good night to Olympus, till the morrow's tale begins.